And right here, Canadian Looney. So we've got something really interesting to show. It's going to be this brand new committee meeting that's happening right now. We're going to show it live. And again, normally on my live shows, like I'm interactive like all the time, like and the camera's up. I've already done a couple of hours in the chair today, and probably I'm just going to let this one run. But this is going to be interesting. People want to know about Randy Boissonnault and where the second Randy is, where's Waldo, all that foolishness. Let's take a look at what has been going on.
The other thing that I want to remind everyone is the interpreters and the need for a question to be asked and an answer to be given. Even though we may not like the answer or we may not like the question, I want to remind all members that every member has a right to ask whatever question they want in relation to this issue, even if you don't like the question that's being asked. So with that being said, Ms. Khalid, on what?
On exactly what you're saying. I just want to add something, if that's okay.
Well, I don't think there's a need to add something. I think I've been pretty clear.
Chair, I just want to reinforce Standing Order 18 to say that, yes, absolutely, everybody has the right to ask the questions that they're entitled to, but they must do so respectfully and refuse from calling people names, etc. And if there is respectful discussion, then I won't need to step in to make sure that disrespect is.
Well, right. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Khalid, for that.
You can already see the chirping, Chair. I'm just putting it out there. I would appreciate if you would be proactive.
I will conduct the meeting in the manner in which I think it needs to go. Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Boissonnault, you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, every member of this committee, every member of Parliament has an obligation to conduct themselves in a manner that respects both the letter and the spirit of Canada's strict ethics regime for public officials. Throughout my time in public life, I've always done just that. As I explained to this committee in the spring, I respect the role of the opposition in holding the government to account on important issues. However, it's no secret that our conversations on accountability can, more often than not, be clouded by partisan interests. This has been particularly evident in the conduct of Conservative MPs in this Parliament. When we are talking about people's reputations, people's ethics, as they work to organize their financial affairs following an election, conversations that are marked with partisan suspicion and bad faith are neither helpful nor fair. To ensure that fairness, we have a non-partisan and independent Ethics Commissioner to advise us, to help ensure compliance with our legal obligations, and to adjudicate matters when concerns might be raised. With that in mind, I'm happy to inform this committee that the Ethics Commissioner has written to me and told me that he has completed his assessment, including the examination of my phone records. He has once again, for the third time, come to the conclusion there is no cause for concern, and he considers this matter closed. Pour garantir l'impartialité du Parlement.
To ensure that fairness, we have a non-partisan and independent ethics commissioner to advise us, to help ensure compliance with our legal obligations, and to adjudicate matters when concerns might be raised. With that in mind, I'm happy to inform this committee that the ethics commissioner has written to me and told me that he has completed his assessment, including the examination of my phone records. And he has once again, for the third time, come to the conclusion that there is no cause for concern, and he considers this matter closed.
Ethics Office for reviewing the facts and the evidence and confirming to me once again that he sees no reason to believe the allegations made about me in the media and by Conservative MPs. Colleagues, the Commissioner has no reason to believe these allegations because those allegations simply aren't true. That said, I do recognize the distraction that this matter has become. I sincerely regret the partisan attacks. I'm disappointed by them and the allegations that have prompted and the effect they've had on my family and those around me. With the benefit of hindsight, I would not have gone into business with Mr. Anderson. And while it has had no impact whatsoever on my duties as a minister, and while I have always followed my ethical obligations, it is clear in hindsight that this is not an individual whose actions and choices I would want reflecting on me. Chers collègues, avec du recul, je n'aurais pas dû faire affaire avec Monsieur.
Dear colleagues, with the benefit of hindsight, I would not have gone into business with Mr. Anderson. While it has had no impact whatsoever on my duties as a minister, and while I have always followed my ethical obligations, it is clear in hindsight that this is not an individual whose actions and choices I would want reflecting on.
I had deep concerns following Mr. Anderson's testimony before this committee. Like all of you, I believe he has an obligation to be forthright with this committee about the facts of this matter, in particular because I know those facts would further confirm that I'm not involved. If Mr. Anderson was in fact intending to refer to someone else in the text messages he sent, he should give that person's name to this committee. If he was in fact using my name without my knowledge or permission, then he should tell that to this committee. I do not know which is the case, but I can say unequivocally that I absolutely did not take part in the conversations referenced. I sent no such messages to Mr. Anderson. I had no involvement with any dealings or business with the Gowie Group, and any suggestion to the contrary is not true. In the spirit of transparency, I have proactively sent my own records for September 6th and 7th to the clerk of the committee this morning, which I previously gave to the Ethics Commissioner at his request prior to his most recent letter to me on this matter. I trust that this will further illustrate the simple truth. Whatever happened here, I was not involved, and I invite the members here to review those records for themselves. Once again, I thank the Ethics Commissioner for impartially reviewing the evidence and confirming this for a third time. Chers amis, je suis ici pour...
Dear friends, I'm here to shed light on this question, and
that I can today, even though I was not involved in the events this committee seems to have questions about. Let's have a conversation about the facts. Let's move beyond the baseless accusations and innuendo, and then let's all get back to work delivering for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Boissonnault. And just for the benefit of the committee, we did receive that information at 1:08 this afternoon. It has not been sent out to translation, or it has been. It will come back as translated, and then we'll certainly share that with the committee when it does come back. Again, just a reminder to everyone to be mindful of our interpreters. Members have time to ask questions. Minister, you have time to respond. I don't want to be in a position where I have to referee and get in the middle of the questioning. Ask the question, answer it, and let's go. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I ask that, in keeping with the spirit of disruptions, that if there is points of order, that the point of order be stated in advance of the intervention?
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
thank you.
It's a fair ask. Mr. Barrett, go ahead for 6 minutes, please.
Mr. Boissonnault, who's Randy?
Mr. Barrett, could you clarify your question?
There are a series of text messages from your discredited business partner, Mr. Anderson. Those messages refer to Randy. That's you, right?
It is not. And in fact, as I indicated in my opening statement, I've turned over my phone records to the Ethics Commissioner and now to this committee. And as you will see, they show none of the text messages that have been reported on by Global News. The messages that I turned over were across all platforms, Mr. Barrett, across all the telephones that I have. And the Commissioner of Ethics has come to the conclusion that I am not that Randy.
Where were you on September the 6th?
So let's walk through a timeline which I think will be helpful.
You had the same amount of time to answer
it's
based
up
on
to
the
the
amount
chair
of
to
time
decide.
that I
Chair,
asked.
how are you managing time? Do I get to do fulsome answers?
Similarly to what how we managed it last time, the time that the question is asked is the time you will have to respond. Mr. Barrett asked you where you were on September 6th. Answer the question.
2022.
I was in Edmonton and I traveled to Vancouver in the morning.
Were you at the Liberal Cabinet retreat?
I arrived in the morning, Vancouver time. The Cabinet retreat started in the evening of September 6th.
Okay. And you spoke on the phone that day to your business partner, Stephen Anderson, correct?
Mr. Chair, I have a timeline that I would like to share with this committee that will answer Mr. Barrett's question fully. There was a 1 minute phone call
it's a yes
that
or no
followed
question.
a text that I received from
you-
Pure Relator asking for an account to be settled. I texted Mr. Anderson. He called me back. We had a 1-minute phone call about this issue, and then I sent the text to him. I didn't.
So you called and texted Mr. Anderson that
No,
day, yes or no?
I did not call him. He called me.
Okay.
I texted him to let him know
You
that
spoke
I
to
had
him
an
on the
account.
telephone that day?
Go ahead, Mr. Barrett.
Okay. So we've established that you spoke to him on the phone and you exchanged text messages with him on the date of September 6th. So I want to refer you to a statement from your staff in regard to this matter that said that it wouldn't have been possible on the 8th of September because you were at a cabinet retreat in Vancouver and had no access to any electronic devices on the 8th. But you were also at a cabinet retreat on the 6th of September of 2022. And of course you had access to your devices that day, as you did on the 8th. Is that not true?
That is not true. During the 7th and 8th, during cabinet meetings during the day, our devices are locked up in lock boxes. On the 6th, there were no cabinet meetings during the day. And I can tell you the time, Mr. Barrett. The time that I got the voicemail to transcription
Is on the 8th.
was
Did you have
11:28 a.m.
On the 6th?
The conversation with Mr.
On the
Anderson
6th
took
and the
place at
8th,
11:29
Barrett,
and lasted
Ask your
for 1
question,
minute.
please.
On the 6th and the 8th, did you have access to electronic devices during the day at all?
On the 7th or the 8th?
On the 6th or the 8th, did you at any time have access to your electronic devices, yes or no?
I had access to my electronic devices when I was not in confidential cabinet meetings, yes.
So you're in Vancouver on the phone with your discredited business partner, Stephen Anderson. We have text messages from Mr. Anderson to a client that your company ripped off. And those text messages say, I have Randy and them I need to update, asking, as West Coast is closing in 7 minutes, you were on the West Coast, and Randy is in Vancouver. Well, you're Randy that was on the West Coast in Vancouver, isn't that right?
So, Mr. Barrett, let me refer you to the Commissioner of Ethics letter from June 25th, when he stated very clearly, other than the name Randy being used in text messages from Mr. Anderson to Malvina Gowie, messages with according to the published excerpts were neither addressed nor copied to you. I do not have any information before me to support the allegation that you were involved in managing or operating GHI.
So you expect Canadians to believe that the Randy referred to in these texts 9 times is anyone else but you, that the Randy who is in Vancouver and who needs to be updated on the money transfer is anyone else but you, and you admit to speaking to your business partner on the phone. Why don't you just admit that you're the Randy that he's talking about?
So the person in question was no longer my business partner. I was simply a shareholder of the company. I had no operational role in that company. And because PIERRE was looking to settle an account, they had my number still in their logbook. They reached out to me. They could not contact GHI. I informed Mr. Anderson of that fact. He called me. I informed him that I would send him the text, which I did, and the conversation ended there.
So we
and
have
the texts
a year,
are with the
so we have
Commissioner
a
and with this
year
committee. Mr.
after
Barrett.
you claim to have been done being involved in the operations of this business. You're expecting us to believe that you are dealing with your business partner on accounts payable, but you're not dealing with him on accounts receivable. That, of course, is far too incredible for anyone to believe. Have you ever been given money from Mr. Anderson since 2021 to either from his personal account, from his personal bank accounts, or from any bank accounts of people that he is connected with? Because, Minister, I've got to say, where there's smoke, there's fire.
No, Mr. Barrett, you're simply mistaken. PIERRE reached out to me because they had my number on an old
Received the
logbook.
money. The question is about the money. Have you
You
received
had
money?
several questions in your statement, and you had a long time. So am I able to answer with the time that he used, Mr. Chair?
I'm going to give you a couple of extra seconds. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. So, look, I was very clear that I earn no income from GHI after I stopped working for the company when I was elected. There was one end of wrap-up for 2021 payment that came to me to wrap up the 2021 business, but those monies came from GHI.
Thank you. Ms. Shanahan, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair. My microphone is on, or do I?
It's off now.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you very much, Chair. Just trying to follow the jumble of dates and so on that Mr. Barrett was referring to Minister BOISSONNAULT. Can you explain the context of this phone call that Mr. Barrett is asking about? Because I'm hearing the date of the 6th, the 8th. Which is it?
So, Ms. Shanahan, I'm happy to provide context for this call. These were the additional records and dates that the Ethics Commissioner reviewed prior to his September 12th letter. On September 6th, while I was en route to Vancouver, a call came in that I was not able to take from regarding GHI's account with the company. They were using records they had on file in attempt to reach somebody from the company. Despite the fact that I had not been involved in the company for more than a year, I then got a voicemail to text indicating Global Health's import account with Purelator. I texted Mr. Anderson to let him know about this voicemail. He then called me at 11:29 Mountain Time for a 1-minute phone call. At 11:30 Mountain Time, that phone call ended. We discussed this account entirely. That was it. I forwarded the messages from Purelator to Mr. Anderson, and the conversation ended. This is all documented clearly in the records that I provided to the Ethics Commissioner and that we have submitted proactively to the committee today for your information. And it was after reviewing these messages that the Ethics Commissioner wrote me on September 12th and declined to investigate and close this matter. And if I can, Madam Shanahan, the Commissioner said the following: on the basis of the information you have provided and in the absence of any evidence giving me reason to believe you may have been operating or managing GHI in contravention of the Act, I consider this matter closed.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Minister, and I'm sure Mr. Barrett appreciates it as well. Ministre BOISSONNAULT, j'aimerais changer.
Minister BOISSONNAULT, I'll do this in French because the electors in Chateauguay, in my riding, would be interested in this question. So we often hear about these false scandals, and they ask me, Ms. Shanahan, how is it possible that we're still hearing about these situations of conflict of interest and something that is just off? I know that as MPs, we work with the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner, his office, when we come here to Ottawa, and we assume the role of MPs. Because prior to doing so, we might be in some kind of business, we might have shares in different companies and property. So for those of us who have more, that process might take a bit more time. So if you could just share with us how that procedure works. Yes, of course. As you mentioned, Ms. Shanahan, there's a very important procedure in place. When we become members of Parliament, we all have a responsibility as per the law, and we have to comply with the law on conflict of interest. And when you become a minister, the procedure is more in depth. You have to spend time with the commissioner and his staff. You need to send your bank statements and all relevant documentation with regard to investments, documentation for your spouse and partner, and any other information relating to companies that you might be involved in. So the commissioner compiles all of this information, and then there are conversations to see how these shares and interests could be transferred in a way that is compliant with the law. That can take months in some cases. In my situation, it took 6 months, but at the end of it all, we were able to take care of the whole procedure. And every single time, every year, you have to provide updates on your personal situation and provide information, Ms. Shanahan. So I think the best way of explaining this to our electors is to use an example from the sports world. We have a referee who is there to make sure that we are playing by the rules. And the referee in this example is the Commissioner of Conflict of Interest and Ethics. And this, in my case, happened not just once or twice, but 3 times. And he has made it clear that these allegations from the Conservatives that we have seen in the media as well are not. They don't have a foundation. There's nothing to it. Okay, that's very interesting, Minister. Well, it could be the case that maybe some MPs have made mistakes over the years and something surfaces or there's an email. But this has been very reassuring to see and know that there has been communication with the Office of the Ethics Commissioner, and they took the time to look into this. And if I understand this correctly, in your case, it's not just once, it's not even twice, it's been 3 times now, if I've understood this correctly. Yes, it's been 3 times that your situation was examined in depth, and they didn't find anything. Yes, the Ethics Commissioner was very clear on this, Ms. Shanahan, and he was saying that based on the information you provided and in the absence of any evidence, I have no reason to believe that you were involved in the management of this company. So in light of the applicable legislation, I had considered this case to be closed. Okay, so what did you have to do? What did you have to provide, or why did the Commissioner ask you to... A very quick answer, please. All of my phone records, text messages that correspond to the dates in question.
Shanahan, Mr. BOISSONNAULT. Mr. Villemure,
Mr. Villemure for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. Minister, I've been listening to the discussion, and for my electors in Quebec, we'll go over some of the same information maybe in French. Now, despite the conclusions of the Ethics Commissioner, and once again we have you here before us, how do you explain that? Well, it's a question I would ask your colleagues. I think there are certain members of the Parliament around this table, Conservative MPs, who don't believe in the truth or in the statements of the Ethics Commissioner, and it's a shame because he is the referee. He is an officer of the Parliament. We pay his salary. He's provided with a team, and when an officer of the Parliament makes statements on business issues or personal issues or on issues of compliance with the law, we have to take his word for the truth. And Mr. Villemure, for yourself and for your electors, when I swore in as an MP and I became a minister, I took all of that, those procedures very, very seriously. So to put that question to rest and to shed light on this matter, that's why I'm here today. Thank you very much. So the Commissioner considered that your actions were in compliance with the law. Is that the case? Yes, absolutely, 3 times. So, in that case, there might be some things, while being legal, are still not ethical. Would you agree with that? Well, if that was the case, the Commissioner would make that point. He carried out a preliminary examination, and he concluded 3 times that there was no need to go forth with this matter. He made it clear that I wasn't in any kind of gray zone, that I was in violation of the legislation, its wording or its spirit. So he did not find anything, and you're saying it's normal because there was nothing. Well, absolutely, yes, Mr. Villemure. When you look at the beginning of the statement or the beginning of this all, the date is June 4th, and it says that the Commissioner states that I respected the rules laid out by the legislation, and he says that it looks like the Minister respected the obligations under the law when it comes to his association with these businesses, so there's no need to pursue this matter any further. So, reading this report and faced with the situation we're faced with, do you think that these rules are sufficient? Well, we have one of the most robust conflict of interest and ethics systems in the world. Of course, we can always debate these issues as parliamentarians, but we do have some tools available to us, and we are all subject to the same law as members of parliament or ministers, and we have seen here in this case that at 3 different occasions the Commissioner made it clear that I followed the rules, and he considers this affair to be closed as of September 12th. Well, I'll point to something that's a bit outside the scope of what we've discussed so far. In Quebec, there's the Charbonneau Commission, as you know, and during that process, there was a question to a gentleman to know who was with them, and they said, well, I was accompanied by the person accompanying me. So when we are asking you who's Randy, we find ourselves in a similar situation in terms of the answer you're providing us with. So even today, so to the best of your knowledge, who's Randy? Well, I cannot answer this question. My answer would be, it's not me. And it's the ethics commissioner who made it very clear that it's not me. So it's not you. It's not me. And there are two possibilities. It's either Mr. Anderson was communicating with someone who's called Randy and he did not want to disclose their identity, or unfortunately, maybe without my knowledge, he was using my name to make his business work. Again, without my knowledge. If that is the case, then he owes an answer to this commission, to this committee. So what would your guess be on that? Well, I really have no idea what the reality might have been. It's up to Mr. Anderson to answer this question. So Mr. Anderson lied, if we can put it this way, or there's another Randy, but you don't know this other Randy if there's another Randy. It's not me, but you don't know them. I don't know any other Randy. Okay, thank you very much. When you were talking about the timeline, if you can fill in the gaps, if you will, and let us know where we are at this point in time. You referred to a timeline. I just want to give you the opportunity to fill in some of the gaps you may have left. So I was leaving Edmonton to go to Vancouver on September 6th, and I received a text message from PIERRE later that had information in it that had to do with someone from GHI. So I sent a message to Mr. Anderson to let him know, and he called me. I sent him the message at 11:28 Mountain Time, and then he called me. We had a 1-minute long conversation. And by 11:30, that was the end of the conversation, and this is all documented in the logs I provided. So you didn't have any other communication with another Randy? No, not at all. And Mr. Villemure, the ethics commissioner said that this matter is closed now.
6 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Clearly, you don't know who the other Randy is because Mr. Anderson admitted under testimony that he was lying about the other Randy. Is that correct?
I'm not going to put any words in Mr. Anderson's mouth.
Did you watch
Mr.
the
Green.
testimony of Mr. Anderson?
It was painful.
Can you take me back to the moment that you met Mr. Anderson?
I can't recall exactly when I met Mr. Anderson. I met him at a couple of community events in Edmonton, and then we reconnected on a flight early in the pandemic. Would have been probably in the late winter, early spring of 2020.
And in that couple of times that you met him in the community, what was your perception of Mr. Anderson?
I knew that Mr. Anderson had run an import-export business. He informed me that business was doing well and that he had a successful business.
So did he pitch you on the plane to start a business together, or did you pitch him?
Neither of us pitched each other whatsoever on starting a business on that plane ride.
So that was a fabrication from Mr. Anderson as well?
No, what happened, and I'm happy to share this information, is it was several days or a week later, and I'm a private citizen at this time. I received an email or communication on my phone indicating that the country needed people who understood how to bring.
At what point did you start a business relationship with Mr. Anderson?
In April of 2020, Mr. Green.
How would you have characterized Mr. Anderson's competencies? Did you believe him to be competent?
I believe that he knew how to do import-export activities.
Did you believe him to be honest?
I had no reason not to believe that he was honest.
So you say it's clear in hindsight that you would not have gone into business with Mr. Anderson. When did you have that epiphany?
I think it has been building for some time in 2024, Mr. Green.
It wasn't when you were under allegations of fraud?
Can you clarify this question?
Was the company not under the proceedings of a civil case?
Not while I was, not at the time that I was involved in the operations of the company.
What about afterwards?
I had no operational role in the committee.
But you would have been listed, right, as a director likely?
I was not a director.
You were a shareholder.
I was only a shareholder, and so I was not listed in any of the legal proceedings.
And so, fortunately for you, how many shares did you own percentage-wise?
I owned 50% of the shares, and I have, since that time, unilaterally and voluntarily disposed of those shares.
You were a silent partner, an investor, with 50% investment in this company.
It is, yes, I had 50%.
Okay, I'll take that.
Sure.
Now, in a 50-50 partnership, your number's still listed on PureLater sometime after the case. So had you ever had any other instances where there was a crossover between business inquiries and your personal phone?
It might have happened before, but on September 6th, it did take place, and I informed Mr. Anderson of the fact that PureLater was trying to get in touch with GHI, and I just informed him. They called my personal phone.
Okay, so they still had your personal phone on record.
PureLater must have still had it in their old records.
Where does PureLater deliver its information or its packages or whatever it is you'd be receiving? Where does it deliver it to for GHI?
I have no idea.
You don't know the address of GHI?
I do not, because I haven't been involved in the company in over 3 years,
When you were involved,
Mr. Green.
where did stuff get delivered?
There was a warehouse that it was directed to on the south side of Edmonton. For a time, it was at a medical supply company that had an extra bay, and then Mr. Anderson picked another warehouse on the south side of Edmonton.
So all your deliveries and mail were going to warehouses?
I can't comment on mail. Mr. Anderson would have received physical mail at
PureLater reached out to you.
PureLater reached out to me because for a time, I was the contact for the PureLater account, and it was just a legacy number left on their system. That's simply how they contacted me.
So, I would put to you that within the 6 minutes of Mr. Anderson's testimony, as somebody who doesn't know him but has also been involved in business, I didn't see him as being a credible witness. I didn't see him as being credible. I saw him, in fact, unravel right before us in terms of the stories that he was telling. How come it took you so long to realize that you were dealing with somebody that couldn't be trusted?
As I said in my opening statement, and I'll say it again, Mr. Green, with the benefit of hindsight, and having been dismayed by that testimony, would not have gone into business with Mr. Anderson if I had to do it all over again.
It was lucrative.
I mean, you'd have to define lucrative. And
you're in a 50-50 partnership. Mr. Anderson testified that he was drawing $250,000 a year. Is it safe for me to assume that that was also your income?
My income has been declared to the Ethics Commissioner, and you know that when we are private citizens, we don't discuss those matters in these forums, that we have a place.
So I'm going to ask you, because it's public testimony.
Sure.
He suggested that you, when I put these questions to him, that you were receiving $250,000 a year in compensation. Were there additional compensations to $250,000, or was that just your base salary?
So these matters have been shared with the Ethics Commissioner because it's the right place to share that information, and all of this information was disclosed in my initial filing to the Commissioner.
You suggested that the wrap-ups for your payments from GHI were a wrap-up in 2021. What was the nature of that contract, and did that contract continue to be in execution into 2023, 2024?
Look, that's a very fair question, and when I said that there was a 2021 year-end wrap-up payment, it was exactly that. It was for work that was done in 2021, but did not continue after I was elected in office in September of 21.
So when was the absolute last time you received any money from Mr. Anderson and or any related parties?
Late 2022 or late January 2022 or early February 2022.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Green. Thank you, Mr. That concludes our first round, 6-minute round. We're going to now start with 5 minutes, and I'm going to go to Mr. Cooper for 5. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Minister Boissonnault, when you last appeared before this committee had text messages referencing a Randy from September 8th. You said the Randy referenced in those text messages was not you, and your office even put out a statement saying that you were in Vancouver and had no access to electronic devices, and that you had made no phone calls during the time frame in question on September 8th. Since you appeared before committee, we now have a new tranche of text messages from September 6th that reference Randy in Vancouver. You, Randy, through you, Mr. Chair, were in Vancouver, and now you tell the committee that you did talk to Anderson. You did text Anderson. You didn't say that before. You left this committee with the impression that you had no communications with Anderson, and now you say that? I would submit, Mr. Boissonnault, through you, Mr. Chair, that that is a material omission. It is a material misrepresentation. Why didn't you tell the full truth last time you appeared before the committee? Why are we only finding out about this now? Is it because you need a new cover story?
Minister?
I reject the ending of your question, Mr. Cooper, emphatically. Look, the testimony that I gave at this committee when I was last here was about September 8th, and then after summer testimony, I proactively provided my text messages to the Commissioner of Ethics. And Mr. Cooper, I don't have data in my phone that indicates who I texted over 2 years ago. Mr. Chair, I get more time.
You had a choice.
I do believe I get more time,
You had a choice to come to this committee and be forthcoming.
Hang on, Mr. Cooper. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds to respond. Members do have the right to reclaim their time as well, and I'm trying to be as fair as I can. Minister, please go ahead.
So, Mr. Cooper, in the morning of September 6th, as I indicated, I got a text message from PIERRE. I indicated that to Mr. Anderson. He called me. We had a 1-minute phone call.
You had a choice.
I sent him the
to
text.
disclose
Point of order,
that
Mr.
to
Chair.
committee,
Mr. Cooper.
and you didn't do so.
I'm going to Mr. Cooper. Go ahead, Mr.
But I
You
have a
didn't
point of
do
order,
so.
Mr. Chair.
Very conveniently.
Hang on. Point of order, Mr. Fisher.
As Mr. Green had recommended, Standing Order 16-2, interrupting the witness.
Okay, I listened to Mr. Green's questioning, and there were several times where he did reclaim his time in advance of the minister responding. And so I'm going to ask that, Mr. Cooper, we give ample time for the question. I know you had a long preamble. The question was there. You have the floor, sir. Go ahead, ask your question.
Mr. Chair, the minister had a choice to come here and be forthcoming. He didn't do so. He misrepresented this committee by omission. And I've got to ask you, you said you had nothing to do with the operations of GHI, and now you admit, in fact, you did. The paying of a bill, that is an operational matter. If you had nothing to do with GHI, why wouldn't you simply pick up the phone, call PIERRE later, tell them that you have nothing to do with the operations of the business, and for them to call Anderson? Why didn't you do that?
Minister?
That is a really great question, and the answer is I did 3 times. And it was a collections group of PIERRE that I never contacted that still somehow had my information from their database. So, Mr. Cooper,
you could have
Mr. Cooper, let me finish.
Mr. Boissonnault, why didn't you, at the very least, okay, just text him, say, contact PIERRE later. Why did you then pick up the phone? Isn't the reason you picked up the phone because you wanted to talk about the $500,000 shakedown? That's why you called Anderson, isn't it?
Minister, go ahead, please.
Not at all. That is simply false, Mr. Cooper. And as I've indicated before, I have nothing to do with the Gowie Group. I have nothing to do with all of those deals with Mr. Anderson took place after I was an operational member of this company. And I did text Mr. Anderson. He responded to me by telephone. I indicated to him that this bill was there and he should take care of it because I didn't want further text messages from
Minister
PIERRE.
Boissonnault, no one believes you. And after you materially misled this committee by leaving out a material fact, you've lost any benefit of the doubt. 9, you have yet to explain how there are 9 text messages referencing Randy when the only Randy at GHI ever was you. You had a 50% interest. You have a text message placing you in Vancouver. You were in Vancouver. You've now admitted that on that very day you spoke and texted with none other than Anderson, which you weren't forthcoming about until you had now no choice because you want to cover your butt. And so, very simply, Minister Boissonnault, do you think Canadians are stupid? Everyone knows it's you. Verandi in the text messages, Verandi in the $500,000 shakedown is you, and you, sir, have lacked the character and judgment to serve in cabinet. If you had any integrity,
Point of order.
Thank you,
Point of
Mr.
order.
Cooper.
Point of order.
Okay, thank you. Minister Boissonnault, I'm going to give you some time to respond quickly, if you don't mind.
Sure, I will go quickly.
As quick as
Mr.
possible.
Cooper, if the allegations that you just threw at me were true, the Ethics Commissioner would have seen in an exhaustive evaluation of all the text messages on all of the telephones that I have on all platforms that those text messages existed. They do not. I am not the Randy in question. The Ethics
you.
Commissioner has said so, and he considers
No
this
one
matter
believes
closed.
you.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Baines, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for joining us again. Isn't this case closed?
Mr. Bates, that's certainly what the Commissioner of Ethics thinks and has stated in his letter to me that has been now reported in the media. This matter is closed because not once, not twice, but 3 times now, I have shared exhaustive information with the Ethics Commissioner and with this committee, indicating that I have followed the rules, starting back with my initial filings with the Commissioner, proceeding then to when the story first broke in Global, and that is when I was asked to provide text information about September 8th, which I did, again, across all platforms and on all devices that I have. And based on that, the Commissioner said there was no need to have further examination of the matter. And then following summer testimony, we provided more text messages for 6 and 7 September to the Commissioner, which the committee now has. And that is how the Commissioner has come to the 3rd time indicating that there is no involvement in my operating of this company and that he considers the matter closed.
But despite that, we're still reviewing the matter. So how closed is it? Do we need to go back to the Commissioner again and do it a 4th time?
I hope not. Look, I'm always happy to participate with questions from the Ethics Commissioner. But look, I'm here today to clarify matters, to share the information that I have, and I hope that this allows the Ethics Committee to get on with its very important business. I know you have important studies that you want to undertake, and I'm here because I take my oath as a minister seriously and my responsibilities under the Act seriously.
And thank you for that. So despite the matter being closed 3 times, and maybe we're anticipating a 4th time for the matter to be closed, but I do have just a few questions here. Have you ever spoken to or met with anyone from the Gowie Group?
No, I have not, and they acknowledge that themselves in media reports on the matter.
Okay, and were you involved in any way with the business deal between Gowie or GHI?
No, never in my time with GHI had my time with GHI concluded prior to Mr. Anderson's business deal with the Gowie Group, and I have had no contact with the people in that group.
And any messages shared between Gowie Group that have been reported on by Global News? Did you send any of those messages?
I did not, and I shared my text messages on all platforms and all devices with the Ethics Commissioner, and the Ethics Commissioner has indicated that I'm not the person in question.
Have you had any role in the operations of GHI since you were elected in 2021?
I have not.
Have you been kept up to date since being elected regarding who the employees of GHI are, or who have may been hired, quit, active workforce, etc.?
No, I haven't, and I'm not aware of GHI's new businesses or any contracts they would have pursued or any legal activities that would not be appropriate or compliant with the Act to do so. I took my disclosure process seriously, and when I stopped being involved in the operations of GHI, I stopped being involved in the operations of GHI, and since that time, I have unilaterally surrendered my shares for no compensation.
So you're not a shareholder of GHI. Did you receive any compensation for your shares when you surrendered them? You just said you didn't.
I did not receive any compensation, and this might also answer one of Mr. Green's questions. I also did not receive any dividends from the company as a shareholder at any time.
Have you ever met Carla Roddick, President of Canada Medical?
I have not.
Have you ever met Ian Stedman, Assistant Professor of Ethics and Governance at York University?
No, I have not.
Have you ever met Curtis James, who ran a warehouse next door to GHI's warehouse?
I have not.
Have you ever been contacted by Edmonton Police Services related to GHI?
No, I have not.
Have you ever met Francesca LeBlond?
No, I have not. I do not know who that person is.
Have you ever been involved in any business dealings with Francesca LeBlond?
Not at all.
Okay, well, those are my questions. I consider this matter closed for the fourth time.
Well, we certainly appreciate that, Mr. Baines, but we'll carry on with Mr. Villemure for 2.5 minutes. Excusez, Monsieur Villemure, 2 minutes et demi. Commencez, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. I will be ceding my time to Mr. Matthew Green.
Mr. Green.
Chair, Mr. Beausoleil, you've stated that many times that the Ethics Commissioner cleared you 3 times, not once, not twice, but 3 times. You would also acknowledge in order to open up an investigation, the Ethics Commissioner would have to have some kind of reasonable grounds to even embark on something so as it not to be frivolous or vexatious. Would you not agree?
I understand that that's the process, yes.
So in that process, while you say you've been cleared and it's been closed 3 times, it's also true that every time something's closed, new information comes out and you're back in and under investigation of the Ethics Commissioner.
I'm not sure it's actually called an investigation at this stage. He asked me for information.
You can save the semantics. The point is that a case was opened, it was closed, another case was opened, it was closed, and it's because the Ethics Commissioner has no real legal authority, investigative authority, to take warrants or subpoena or use anything that could get beyond voluntary disclosure. Is that not true?
No, if the Commissioner of Ethics asks you for information, you comply. It's not optional.
You voluntarily give it to him, correct?
I would have to ask my team and look at the Act as to what the penalties would be for noncompliance, but I take my responsibilities very seriously. And
well, the penalty for even being in violation is only $500. So I can't imagine it's material when you're in an industry that you're getting a payout of $250,000 a year. And now you've said that you received no earned income, no dividends. At any time, did you loan money to the company?
No.
There was never any shareholder loans?
No.
Okay. So with that being said, during this process of the Ethics Commissioner's, I'll call it a review to be charitable to you, review, you stated that he emphatically cleared you, and then you went on to state that he does not have any information before him, and it's on the information you've provided.
Those are the words in the Commissioner's letter.
Correct.
And what is different, the third letter that he sent me was the first time that the Commissioner said, I consider this matter closed.
The matter that was under review. Correct. But I think we can all agree that he has no authority to do, or resources, quite frankly, to do the work that we've witnessed the media do, which quite frankly has gotten more information and disclosure that has resulted in additional, I'll call them reviews. I say investigation, I'll give you review. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Do you have any knowledge of any information that could come out in the future that would put you back before this committee?
I do not, Mr. Green. And look, I said to Mr. Villemure in French that we do have one of the most robust ethics and conflict of interest systems in the world. And we go through a lot of steps to make sure that we comply with the rules. And I followed those rules. And I think what is important to reflect from the 3 letters that I've received from the Commissioner is that every single time he's indicated that I've followed the rules. And in the last 2 issues that were related to text messages, he indicated very clearly that I had no operational role in the company, which is what I've always asserted to this August committee.
You would agree that dealing with matters of outstanding bills is an operational feature?
No, I did not settle a bill. I informed Mr. Anderson that I received a text from Peer Leader.
Okay, look, you know, I would love as much as anybody to be able to move beyond this particular issue. The challenge that faces me is that, you know, from the get-go, this has been a sordid tale of allegations of fraud and corruption in some instances. The stories do not add up. I'll share with you, Mr. BOISSONNAULT, that the testimony of Mr. Anderson, within 6 minutes, certainly not somebody that I'd be doing business with. I'm quite frankly shocked that as a minister, a senior minister in this government, it took you to 2024 to come to those same conclusions. And I would hope that, you know, in the days and weeks to come, that the Canadian public does have all the information that's available to it. So I guess in close, do I have a little bit of time? I guess in close, I just want to give you the opportunity to state whatever you feel in your defense, to hopefully not see you back in front of this committee on this particular issue.
Look, Mr. Green, I really appreciate your frankness, and we don't agree on everything in the chamber, but I appreciate your comments today, and I should have done more due diligence on Mr. Anderson, and in hindsight, I would not have gone into business with him if I had to do it over again. And I was dismayed by his testimony, and quite frankly, I regret all of the time that officers and members of Parliament have had to spend on this matter. And with your good graces, we could put this behind us. That's entirely in your hands.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Green. We're going to go. Sorry. Oh, okay.
I heard good graces that I just thought it was funny.
Okay, thank you. All right, we've got a 5-minute round for, I believe Mr. Barrett's going to start, and then we're going to go over to Mr. Brock. So 5 minutes, Mr. Barrett. Go ahead, please, sir.
I have an official document from the Government of Alberta dated March 28th, 2020. It's 2 days before you incorporated Global Health Imports officially entering into business with Stephen Anderson. It shows Stephen Anderson listed 7 vehicles as collateral, 5 2019 Land Rovers and 2 2019 Porsches, totaling about $1 million. Yes or no, did you know about this?
Not.
So you were unaware that your business partner posted 7 high-end luxury vehicles as collateral. That's your story?
I didn't review that as part of the filings of the company. It was his decision to put collateral. I didn't have any collateral up in my particular.
Are you currently driving any of the Land Rovers or Porsches?
I am not.
Okay. Well, I'm quite sure that no one believes you other Randy. Mr. Chair, Mr. Brock.
Okay, Mr. Barrett, I'm going to suggest that was not appropriate. I'm going to go to Mr. Barrett. Thank you. Or Mr. Brock, go ahead.
Minister, despite your best efforts, this story is not going away anytime soon. The cloud of suspicion will hang over you until the next election, after which time you'll be looking for a new job. Let's take a look at the facts. Galway Group knew of only one Randy, and that Randy was a minister of the Canadian government. That's yourself. At all material times prior to your election, you were in a 50-50 partnership with Anderson. During your time with the company with Mr. Anderson, you in fact were the only person named Randy. Mr. Anderson, who you're now deeply disappointed about, although you didn't say that when you first testified, blatantly lied to the committee about lying to Canadians and lying to the press that there was some other Randy. He also promised this committee to provide us with details as to who the other Randy is. And surprise, surprise, Minister, he couldn't. Because by doing so, he would identify yourself. Then we now find out on September the 6th, you're in a text communication with Anderson, you're in a phone call with Anderson, despite you assuring us at committee the first time that you've had no communication with Mr. Anderson. Highly, highly suspicious, Mr. BOISSONNAULT. And furthermore, you know full well that this is indeed an operational issue that is banned by the ethics laws for any minister to engage in a management capacity or an operational capacity. You could have had a staffer reach out to Anderson. You could have simply told the courier company, I got nothing to do with the company, deal with Anderson, go pound salt, not my responsibility. You chose to take matters into your own hands to deal directly with Mr. Anderson. Those are the uncontroverted facts. Now, you're also relying upon the fact that you exercised your due diligence with this committee and your due diligence with the Ethics Commissioner. I asked you specifically to provide us with details, all your text messages on all your devices. You failed to do that, Minister. You gave this committee only one set of records pertaining to one device. I was led to believe you told the Ethics Commissioner you had two devices. Again, the Ethics Commissioner is not an investigator. They don't have investigative powers like law enforcement. They can't obtain production orders on service providers to verify what you are saying. So the Ethics Commissioner has to take it on good faith that you're being honest. I've got some serious reservations about your honesty, as do Canadians. So, will you provide this committee with all text records on all your devices? And tell us how many devices you had in your possession in the fall of 2022.
Mr. Chair, will you give me 2.5 minutes to respond?
Data Center, thank you so much for signing up for a membership.
I think it was a very simple question. Mr. Brock was commenting.
It was a 2.5-minute question.
I realize that, but it was a very simple question. I'm going to ask you to answer the question, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Housefather.
Mr. Brock, the information that you cited in your monologue was reviewed by the Ethics Commissioner. I'm not the Randy in question. It is not me. It's not possible for it to be me. That is in the Commissioner's letter of September 12th. He considers this matter closed. And look, I'm at the committee's disposal, and I provided the committee with information that it required of me.
Minister, will you provide us with full information?
That's time then.
Will you provide us with, what are you hiding, Minister?
So, just relax.
What are you hiding?
Minister.
I've never seen you do that to anyone else.
No, because
Thank you so much, Kirk. You're amazing.
You're over here, and I'm trying to listen to what's going on. Then I can't focus on the questioning, Ms. Khalid. Okay, so, Minister, I'm going to ask you on behalf of Mr. Brock. You've been asked a very specific question about the devices. Are there any other devices that you can provide to the committee, sir?
No, Mr. Chair, because I provided all text messages across all devices for the dates in question across all platforms as asked by the committee.
Mr. Housefather for 5 minutes.
Point of order before we go to Mr. Housefather.
On your
Mr.
point of
Chair.
order, go ahead.
Telling a member to relax, I think, is inappropriate, sir, as a chair.
I think I said right at the onset, Mr. Fisher, and I appreciate the challenge, that it's difficult when there's cross-talk that's going
Understood.
on. And so
Understood.
I'm trying to listen to the
Just the
conversation
word
that's
relax.
going on. And when I'm hearing it from this side, I can't focus on what the minister and Mr. Brock
Understood.
are talking about, okay? So I said that right at the onset, and I was going to enforce it, and I did.
On that same point of order, Chair,
On the same point of order, go ahead, Ms. Khalid.
I just respectfully like to ask you, why is it that you only hear it from this side and never from any other
I
party?
think I did that the other day, actually. I think I heard it from the other day. Yeah, you might want to review the tapes, Ms. Khalid. Mr.
And if we
Housefather.
were going to start counting, then I think that the
Iker Khalid is a troll and a huge problem for the country of Canada. Like, anybody agree or disagree with that? What do you guys say?
An unacceptable practice in any committee to have member staff or House officer staff making audible interventions to over top of members of the committee or the chair of the committee or a witness of the committee. And so perhaps a gentle reminder to staff who are here from House officers from the government that if they're interested in intervening at this committee, they can put their name forward to appear as a witness, or they can run for Parliament. They're not to yell over top of us.
I've dealt with that issue before a couple of times, and that's a good reminder to all staff that are here. Mr. Housefather, please go ahead for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Boissonnault, if you used bad judgment to enter into a business relationship with Stephen Anderson, and he shouldn't have been somebody you entered into business with prior to your election and becoming a minister, would that be of the purview of the ethics commissioner? Would that be something you're not allowed to do, enter into business with the wrong guy?
No.
In the event that you were paid in any way before you were elected as a minister, whatever the type of arrangement that you had fiscally with the company, would that be something that would be under the purview of this committee or anything the ethics commissioner should be interested in?
No, but in your disclosure process, you would be required to inform the commissioner of that, to provide all of the documentation, and to make sure that a minister is compliant with the Act. They must organize their former private affairs in a way that complies with the Act. So, for example, if you personally have any stocks, actively traded stocks, you have to get rid of them, or you have to sell them. You can't even put them in a blind trust. And so I followed all those rules. And if you'll allow me, Mr. Housefather, I just want to state so the committee hears it again, that I submitted all the messages across all devices for the date requested on September 8th. And I've now done the same for September 6th. It's simply not true that I didn't fulfill the requests from this committee.
Coming back to the issue, the first time you were asked about September the 8th, today we're talking about text messages and one brief phone call on September the 6th. Is it still true you never spoke to Mr. Anderson on the 8th of September?
Yes.
And it's still true you never texted with Mr. Anderson on the 8th of September?
It is.
Perfectly. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to the text messages you exchanged on the 6th, because I'm sure I don't want you to get called back here for more questions about these 6. The first one from you says, hello. And then the next one is, where in the world are you? Great to hear your voice. Somewhere in this, I assume Mr. Anderson called you. If you texted first and then he's responded and he heard his voice?
Correct.
And it would be after, where in the world are you, perhaps?
Correct.
Perfect. And what you probably told him was, hey, I've got a Purelator account collection thing that came in. I'm going to send that to you, right?
Yes, and I don't want to receive any more, so take my name off the list. Take my number off the list.
And basically, a second later, at 5:33 p.m., whatever, UTC,
Just so we're clear,
you sent him the Purelator text.
Just so that we're clear for the record, that is Greenwich Standard Time. So this happened at 11:40, the time that you're asking me about, 11:28 a.m. Mountain, and then 11:29 Mountain, and at 11:30 Mountain, I forwarded the Purelator message.
Thank you very much. And then you said Saturday drink. Did you end up ever meeting him for a drink?
No, we did not.
Okay. And you didn't, after you left the company, socialize frequently with Mr. Anderson?
No.
And after you left the company, you had very sporadic conversations with him, is what I understand?
Correct.
How many conversations do you think you had with him after you left as a participating member of the company?
I couldn't even speculate a guess, 4, maybe 6 in a year or 2.
And I imagine if you were operationally involved in the business, you would have had way more conversations with him?
Absolutely.
During the time that you were operationally involved in the business previous to your election as a minister, how many times a week would you talk to Mr. Anderson?
It would have been several conversations, text messages, emails a day.
Perfect. And I think we're left with the question, you're here because Mr. Anderson chose to reference Randy in multiple text messages. That's the reason we're here. In the end, there are people claiming that you're that Randy. There are people that are, there's no proof of that. All we know is that Mr. Anderson either has somebody else named Randy that he needs to tell the committee who it is, or he misleadingly used your name to different clients of his, trying to somehow bring you in, perhaps that there was a minister of the Crown involved in making himself more important. But the only person, right, Mr. Boissonnault, that can actually answer that question is Mr. Anderson, correct? None of these other people that Mr. Baines asked you about, a list of people that you didn't know, none of them would know if Mr. Anderson had exchanged text messages with you or not, presumably, correct?
It's not only is it correct, it's verified in at least 2 letters from the Commissioner of Ethics. One that I can't possibly be the other Randy because there are no text messages to that effect. And then in the most recent letter, he indicated very clearly that I've not been operating the company and considers this matter closed.
But again, the goal of, I believe, the Conservatives on the committee is not to find out who the other Randy is if it's another Randy. Their goal is only to try to make you be that Randy. So the only issue here that can be answered is in text messages between you and Mr. Anderson and claims Mr. Anderson made. So truthfully, the only person that can answer that question, other than you who have clearly told us you're not that person, would be Mr. Anderson, correct?
And he should indicate whether he used my name to advance his business interests without my knowledge, or if there's somebody else out there with the same name as me.
He should, and I absolutely agree. And thank you, Minister.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Housefather. That concludes our round of questioning for today. It's been an hour. It's been an hour after the second round. That's the way it goes. Okay, Mr. Barrett, I see your hand. I'm going to suspend for a couple of minutes. I want to thank the Minister for appearing before committee today. I'm going to suspend for a couple of minutes. We're going to come back, open committee business, and I'm going to go to Mr. Barrett when we're back.
Sorry, guys. Just trying to... Okay, my camera's out of focus. Everything's all screwed up. Let's see how long it takes to get to the second round. Because, come on, camera, focus, for crying out loud. There we go. Yeah, so pretty interesting so far. Randy Boissonnault is just a liar. Like, and all the Liberals that are trying to deflect and distract, they're liars too, and they're lying right to you, and they'll do it after the next election, before the next election. Not saying that other MPs won't lie, but these Liberals, oh man. Again, I'm still wound up from watching Greg Fergus earlier this afternoon. Okay, I've just about got it. Here we go. We're back.
And in official languages and call related witnesses.
And call...
Related witnesses.
I heard him say call related witnesses.
Mm-hmm. Period.
Period.
Yeah, I didn't, point of order, yeah, we didn't hear that either, so please. could
Big
you
surprise.
read it out,
Point
please?
order from
Repeat it
the
again,
bitch
Mr.
Brenda
Barrett.
Shanahan. Piece of shit.
Given today's testimony,
Yes.
the committee expand its study on the Minister of Employment, Workforce Development, and official languages, and call related witnesses.
Okay. It's fairly straightforward. I suspect that those related witnesses, you would want the committee members to submit names of related witnesses, or do you want us?
As is the committee's practice.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I'm going to accept it. Ms. Shanahan, I had you not on the motion. The motion's been moved. So we're going to speak to the motion right now, and I'm going to start a list, Ms. Shanahan, and then followed by Ms. Khalid. Go ahead, Ms. Shanahan.
Chair, still finding my feet in this committee, but from what I heard today and the time that I've had to review previous testimony and the work that this committee has done, and the clarification that indeed the Commissioner of Conflict of Interest and Ethics has reviewed this matter, the independent commissioner, may I say, the commissioner who's not there to score political points, but the commissioner that is there to review the facts, to interview the person in question, the commissioner that acts under a law that we have put in place here in Parliament to deal with these very issues of conflict of interest, of dealing either with MPs or with ministers, that it's been not once, not twice, but 3 times that the commissioner has come back with a conclusion, a letter, a report saying that indeed that there is that this allegation does not stand under scrutiny, and I think it actually will be interesting, and I know that it's coming up in a different study, but given that the commissioner does it's part of the mandate of this committee to review the commissioner's work. We can have a better understanding, because I think it was Mr. Green that was questioning the quality of the commissioner's work and what he can and can't do, and so on and so forth. I don't know if we start having a court of scope. Okay, if we start having judicial powers in dealing with conflict of interest issues, I think that's going to be a whole other ball of wax. Where it could be, used as, for example, a political or partisan weapon against anybody that the majority decides, should be on the receiving end of that. And so that is where I really feel that this. I read the evidence, I looked at it again, I listened carefully to all the questions that were asked. I asked my own questions. There's really nothing more to be said. It's all been clearly dealt with. And, Chair, I just want to, because, des fois, les commettants dans mon comté...
Because at times I have people in my riding who ask me about the committee work and how they can verify and follow up on the work being done by MPs and ministers. And as I was saying, sometimes there are false scandals. So they ask me the question, what is going on, Ms. Shanahan? There needs to be a way for us to see into these allegations, and we want to have confidence in our MPs, in our ministers. So what's going on in Ottawa? So how is it possible that there's always someone crying out for a false scandal? So we're faced with this, and we're talking about text messages and PIERRE later and other things. I mean, is this why we send MPs to Ottawa? Members of Parliament who are making a good living for themselves, we all know. And people know about what we make, the budgets that are available to us, and people we end up employing. So, I mean, is this all for us to sit down and talk about text messages and PIERRE later? It's really strange. And especially when I explain to them, and I'm very pleased with the answers provided by the minister today, and I might do a little clip out of that to put on social media. It's not really my generation, but I'm trying to do my best, Mr. Chair, with all this new technologies and platforms. But the point of that would be to show the manner in which the minister answered the questions and how the procedure with the commissioner unfolded and how he responded to the commissioner's questions and whether this is a comprehensive procedure or a procedure in which people can have faith and trust. And people will see that it was a question of text messages and PIERRE later. So there might be something in all of this that maybe I missed parts of Mr. Anderson's testimony, but based on what I heard from colleagues, it appears that he's not a very reliable character. But we are talking more about the minister, and the minister provided all the information, all of his records and logs. If we could look into everyone's phones. I think Michael was here, both Michaels were here, and I was here at this committee. We were talking about emails and the use of parliament resources by political parties. And at one point in time, I was a conservative. I was a member of the Conservative Party, and I think it was in 2019, 2020, and 2021 even, that fundraising emails from the Conservative Party of Canada were being sent out from their parl.gc.ca addresses, so from their parliamentary email accounts. So the use of parliamentary resources for partisan purposes might be an interesting topic for us to look into. But when we're talking about this motion that is before us, it's not even a witch hunt, because there is no witch. So there is no witch. There's nothing there. It's just a simple text message exchange and the boring message from PIERRE later. It's not really business dealings in any way. It's just a phone number that's left somewhere in some database or something, and then there was just a call. So it's nothing exciting. But it's clear that it makes for very interesting discussions when we're out here speculating and saying, well, we don't have confidence, and conservatives, well, that's their position, and Mr. Green doesn't seem to have confidence in the work that has been done, so he might maybe explain to us what he would have liked to see from the Commissioner of Ethics. But it looks like some of our colleagues here think that the work that was done was not very comprehensive. But me personally, I was never involved in the business world, but he does his work in a very good manner. He asks all the questions, he asks for information, and all of the information and the answers that are collected are open to public scrutiny, and it's very interesting to look into those records just to see information about MPs, but other staff that works here. Of course, and there are reasons why the Parliament introduced these procedures, because we needed a way for the public opinion to have an idea as to the profile of their MPs. They have the right to know that. And because, of course, we're dealing with millions and billions of dollars in our business here, for members of the government, especially, that is the case. And I think it was in the 80s or the 90s, maybe the analysts could help me with that, when the law was introduced, the law that created the office of the Conflict of Interest and Ethics Commissioner. 2006. Okay. So it's quite modern. But of course, there are still updates that could be brought to the legislation. I know that there is a 5-year review, for instance, but in 2006, the Parliament considered it important to have this independent office and that it shouldn't be left to the ethics committee. And it was in the time of Mr. Mulrooney, and I was lucky enough to meet him once. Maybe he made mistakes in his lifetime, but he also delivered great services for the country. So the ethics committee of the time was dealing with many files, but it was considered that it would be appropriate for the public opinion to have the relevant information when it comes to these sorts of issues, because it's not about squashing an opponent. That's not why we do this, and I take it for granted that our colleagues are not in it for that purpose. We are simply doing this to reassure Canadians and Quebecers that everything follows the due process. And when there is a violation, it is taken care of. And there are a whole list of consequences when that is the case. But in this case, we've seen that it's been at 3 different times that the commissioner concluded that the allegations and the accusations.
Oui.
Sorry, we don't have the language of the motions.
OK.
So I'm just going to ask him for
C'est une bonne idée. Oui, c'est le langage.
the language of the motion in our emails, and I'm wondering if that's being sent.
The clerk is working on it right now.
I can send that to you.
It's a very simple motion, but we're going to send it out to members of the committee now. Okay. Go ahead.
Est-ce que c'est vrai, Monsieur le Président,
Is it true, Mr. Chair, that we still don't have the translation or the text of the motion? The clerk is working on it, on the motion's translation, and once it's done, we'll be sharing it with the members. Well, I, for one, would like to see, I like seeing things in writing before me, because when you're just listening to something verbally, you might miss some elements. So if we can wait until we have the text in writing.
that we just suspend until we get the written language?
It's being delivered right now, so
Okay.
it's very simple. Go ahead.
Okay, it's coming
Go
into
ahead.
the phone. Okay, good thing I had the charger. Thank you so much to Anthony. Okay. Non, moi je l'ai pas encore.
I still don't have it. Yeah, I still haven't received it.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
No, we're
Non,
we're
OK.
continuing.
Ouais, je peux continuer.
I can carry on then. I'd like to reassure people in my writing that in this text message situation, the ethics commissioner concluded at 3 occasions that what the Minister BOISSONNAULT told us, and he shared the information he shared with us at multiple occasions, and he explained a timeline to us, The commissioner concluded that that was the truth and that the matter is closed. And that the Minister BOISSONNAULT did nothing wrong. So it shows, Mr. Chair, that the wisdom of the parliamentarians that introduced this law and created this independent office was fully justified. And there might be some parliamentarians who are frustrated, maybe. Maybe they would like to go back.
Report,
Maybe they would like to go back to a kangaroo court. I don't know the term in French, but if you can let me know. But we all know what a kangaroo court means, at least in English. That is to say, having random people who would question and judge and then condemn someone. But that is not how we function in a fair society with laws and regulations. And these laws and regulations are in place not to protect MPs. Because, Mr. Chair, I don't know if you experienced this personally, but when you get a request or an email from the office because you missed something in your declaration, sometimes you're not too happy with that, but at least it shows that the system is functional. So I'd like to reassure the people in my riding that the system is functioning. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, merci.
Thank you, Ms. Shanahan.
I will say, like you, I get asked many times, I know you brought this at the onset of your remarks, about the Ethics Committee and particularly chairing the Ethics Committee and what's the function. Well, we have a clear mandate of what our function is, but you know, I tell people in my riding, as you tell people in your riding, that it's an oversight committee, and there's a majority of opposition members on this committee for a reason, not just this committee, but government operations and public accounts, and that is to hold the government to account. And I think we do that job very, very well. Ms. Khalid, go ahead, please. On the motion from Mr. Barrett.
Thank you, Chair. I think Ms. Shanahan made a lot of excellent points, and I'll be brief. I will speak to 3 reasons as to why I cannot support this motion. The first is with respect to timing, as you have indicated many, many times, Chair, and the reason why our work on social media, our work on disinformation, misinformation, has been so prolonged is because of the timing, because of the scheduling, and you've clearly outlined that. I don't agree with this motion because I think that we've heard from the Ethics Commissioner 3 occasions to say there is not a violation based on our rules of conduct with the Ethics Commissioner, and I leave that be. The second is with respect to witnesses. There aren't any listed on this motion. It seems again like this is just broadening the scope to the point where it could be anything and everything, which doesn't help the work that this committee is doing. It makes us less efficient. It makes us basically wasting resources of the House. And as you said, Chair, that if there is a purpose to this committee is to provide that oversight, this motion does not help in achieving that purpose. And the last is, again, with the purpose, we're not achieving the purpose of what this committee is supposed to be doing with this motion. And so with that, I will conclude my remarks and say that I will be voting against this motion, and I'm happy to go to a vote now.
Thank you, Ms. Khalid. Mr. Fisher, go ahead, please, on the motion.
MP Khalid just said basically everything that I was planning on saying. I'm not interested in supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you. I do not have any other hands, so the motion moved by Mr. Barrett is on the floor. Do we have consensus on the motion as proposed by Mr. Barrett? We don't, so I'm going to call the... We don't, I said, right? Did I say that? So we're going to call the vote. Madam Clerk, if you want to call the vote, please.
The vote is on the motion moved by Mr. Barrett. Mr. Baines.
I consider it closed, this matter. No.
Ms. Shanahan.
No.
Mr. Fisher. Mr. Hauswater.
No.
Ms. Khalid.
No.
Mr. Barrett.
Yay.
Mr. Caputo.
Oui.
Mr. Cooper. Monsieur Villemur.
No.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Yeas 4, nays 6.
Okay, so the motion fails. I don't see any other business, so I am going to adjourn the meeting. We'll see you all next Tuesday.
So we're back. Yeah, so that's going to wrap up that one. We got to see Randy get finally put on the stand, giving testimony here in committee. It's all lies. I'm sorry, it's been a frustrating afternoon. First Greg Fergus, and then Randy Bolsonnault, then Brenda Shanahan, then Ikra Khalid. These guys are pigs, and they're a problem for our country. They really make me upset. I'm not going to lie. Like, I'll come back down in the next 5 minutes, but I am pissed off as can be that this is how our nation is running, and that people across the country do not know. It's very upsetting that they finally get this asshole Bolsonnault in the chair again. They delayed that all summer. They did everything they could, and we were... You can look back at the other videos. We were following that. It's just so much. They have no scruples, guys. They would lie straight to your face. I wouldn't do that myself. Like, and again, I am wound up now. I'll come down in the next couple of minutes, but they're just lying to Canadians. And people like my mom watch this shit and believe it. Like, they wouldn't see this because this would never touch the television interface, right? Anyhow, we're going to wrap up. Thank you all so much for tuning in. You guys are the best. I know that most of you feel similar frustrations to the ones that I feel watching this stuff. It is ridiculous. However, we will be back tomorrow with tomorrow's question period. I think on Fridays we start an hour early, so we'll wait and see what Friday brings. They're usually a little more quiet. Thursday was a crazy day in the House of Commons. Check out the live video from today if you haven't seen it. You guys are the best. Much appreciate my man Captain Kirk, my man Mr. Pickles, Sheila Hall, Darren Dimebags. You're the best. Just gonna run for now. Do you guys want to hear the Canadian song one more time? I don't mind. I don't mind playing that one bit.
To be here?
It's time for a change in this country, my friends. A real change.
Wiggle and squirm as you might, it is really hard to put lipstick on a pig.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises.
WTF. Here.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am the one we call Canadian.
Gentlemen, beam me aboard.